From the EPR Creations studio, this is Jason Staples bringing you Unconquered with Doc Staples. This podcast, as always, is brought to you by EPR Creations, by Louis Marquez of Keller Williams Realty in Jacksonville, Florida, by Shenandoah Real Estate in the Research Triangle of North Carolina, by Garage Makeovers, the #1 garage remodeling company in South Florida, and by my newest advertising partner, Justin Galloway of Benchmark Mortgage. As always, information's in the show notes. Let them know you heard about him from the Unconquered podcast with Doc Staples. Well, this one's going to be a pretty short one, y'all, because that game went basically on script. It was almost identical to the game that we projected in advance. Can't remember the score. I think I went 38-10. So in the same range in terms of overall score, just a little bit more scoring by both teams. But my thoughts going in were that Florida State should allow 4 or fewer yards per play. Defense did even better than that. 3.2 yards per play on the day. Only 210 yards in this game allowed by the defense on 65 plays. That's really dominant right there. And then thought they should be, a good bit over 7 yards per play on offense and 7.7 yards per play. I mean, that is an absolutely dominant outing. This was not a competitive game. This game was out of reach by the second quarter, really. By the mid-second quarter, it was obvious which team was going to win this game, and both teams knew it. And fact of the matter is, just Wake Forest can't throw the football this year, and they don't have, without the threat of a Sam Hartman, A.T. Perry, Donovan Green type passing attack, they just don't have the offensive line to dominate without that threat. Basically, they didn't actually even do a whole lot of slow mesh in this game. I don't think they have a quarterback who's really comfortable reading it. I mean, it requires a a triple read in some sense, but it's more of a dual read system. And you've got to have a guy who's comfortable running that and has repped it some and really makes those decisions quickly and naturally. And they really don't have that. They did have a few successful runs pop. I mean, most notably a 51-yarder by Justice Ellison, which was just under a quarter of the entire yardage given up by the defense there, and that was close to being shut down too. I mean, it was one where just got a guy out of a gap, and Ellison was able to squeeze through a tight seam there and make a play, but. Yeah, this was not competitive, and it was kind of what we expected in a lot of respects. Looking through the cumulatives here, opening frame, it was actually more competitive in terms of the yards per play there because of the 51-yard run, which was in that first quarter, toward the end of that first quarter. But once you got outside of that, so it's 5.5 yards per play in each. By each in the first quarter, but Florida State was already up 10-0 by the end of that second quarter. FSU averaged 15 yards a play in the second quarter, and that was because of a couple big plays. Obviously, you had the 80-yard Benson screen pass there, and Wake Forest had 18 plays for a total of 4 yards in the second quarter. That was utter dominance. 0.2 yards per play is pretty good. First half, 9.2 yards per play for Florida State, 2.4 for Wake Forest. FSU had 4 sacks in that first half. And then once they got to the third quarter, that third quarter was in some ways a bit of a gift to the coaching staff because they're going to have a lot to pick on in film session. Florida State got beat in that third quarter. Wake Forest scored 9, gave up 0. Yards per play, 4.9 Wake Forest to 4.4 from Florida State. Just a really uneven, sort of uninspired effort in that third quarter where FSU just didn't take care of business. I mean, they seemed to come out pretty unfocused. 4 carries for 4 yards, 6 of 9, The big issue, 69 passing. The biggest issue in that third quarter was Florida State 4 penalties for 55 yards, which submarined a couple of drives and gave Wake Forest basically a huge boost on the drive that they scored on that they scored a touchdown on. It's just there was a lot of undisciplined play in that third quarter that the coaching staff is not going to be real happy about, and that's something they're going to be able to ride on this week. This is like I said, a bit of a boon to the coaching staff at that point. And then again, fourth quarter, by that point, a lot of backups on the field. FSU 6.7 yards of play and only gave up 1.3 in the fourth quarter as they shut the door on the game. Just, yeah, pretty straightforward game. A few things that did stand out to me. Despite the disparity, despite the overall dominance, this was one where FSU did not run the football especially well in this game. And it's something that, I know the coaching staff will not be happy about how they ran it overall in this game. 4.2 yards per carry against that defense is not enough. And yeah, I mean, they were not able to create the space in the running game that they really want to consistently. You look at Benson, 10 carries for 55 yards. That's fine, right? I mean, that's 55 yards, 5.5 a carry. Okay. Keziah Holmes, 4 for 19, 4.8. Rodney Hill, 5 for 11, 2.22 yards per carry. This was just not a dominant rushing output. And they were in position where once they got up early, they were in position where you could see they wanted to impose their will in the running game. They wanted to try to establish themselves as a run offense in that, and they just weren't able to do it. They were not able to consistently run the football in the ways that they wanted in this game, and that's something that they're going to continue to have to work through and to improve on as they get into that last portion of the schedule. I mean, they can beat Pittsburgh, and actually you're probably going to have to beat Pittsburgh with mostly the passing game because of how Pitt's going to sell out to stop the run. But you're going to need to be able to run the football some to beat Miami. You're going to need to be able to run the football and have some balance in the college football playoff if you get there, and probably in the ACC title game. So running game is still a big work in progress. We did see Jordan Travis break out and run it a little bit more in this game. 7 carries for 29 yards in this game. A couple of them where, I'm saying to myself as he's sort of dragging people, go down, just go down. Because, you want to see him actually do that. You don't want to see him take shots, but, he's a competitor, and you can see that he's starting to get healthier. It was good to see also Tate Rodemaker come in and sling it just a little bit on the glance route on the RPO. So obviously something that just watching it, Peyton Wilson just got an interception off a deflection, and NC State now up 17-7 on Clemson at State. Game just got a lot more difficult for Clemson in that offense that doesn't score a lot of points already. So yeah, Clemson really just doesn't look like they're going to get it in gear this year. And the schedule's not going to get a whole lot easier for them, I don't think, down the stretch. So, wow. Anyway, looking at Rodemaker, he does seem, really comfortable putting the ball in there on some of those glances and that kind of throw. You could see the comfort level with that. Overall, pleased with what he looked like coming in quickly. I do think there's a lot of reason for optimism with the backup offensive line, just in terms of the bodies that you see out there and the athleticism. So that's another positive. I'd like to have seen them get in the game earlier, but again, a poor third quarter prevented that. And that's, if there's one real negative so far in the season, it's that there's been multiple games now where FSU has not handled business quickly enough to be able to get the kind of full platoon, second platoon that you want on the field as early as they should have been. But yeah, this was, like I said, a pretty dominant performance along the lines of what was expected. If anything, a little bit more dominant on defense than anticipated, despite giving up a little bit more in the running game than maybe I thought they would. But they just shut down Wake Forest's passing game pretty much entirely, and that was that. They just once Wake Forest was that one dimensional, and the running game was limited at that. The one dimension they had wasn't real strong. Just a couple that popped, and then everything else was tackle for loss, or not a high success rate even at that. This was they just had no shot to win this game, and yeah, not a whole lot more I'm going to spend on this. I will probably go through a little bit of film this week. Wasn't able to get the second half of the Duke game last week because of the family situation that I had to deal with, but we'll try to get some stuff done. I might look more closely at that third quarter where some of those issues came in than anything else this week. But yeah, until then, I think this is just what Florida State needs to keep doing, and they've got still a lot of room left to grow. This was maybe a B- performance or a B performance from the team as a whole. One other thing I suppose you can point to that I think does still need significant improvement is Jordan Travis missed as good as his game was statistically. 22 of 35, 359 yards, 3 touchdowns, passer rating, college calculated passer rating of 177.3. Just an outstanding statistical game. He missed some throws that if you're playing against a better defense and a team that actually has an offense could hurt you. The one that was nearly intercepted, that wasn't really on him. You had the receiver, that was Keon Coleman, who slipped and fell down on the route there. He's got to do a better job of keeping his feet. But that should have been picked. Again, not really on Travis there, but again, a piece of the passing game that needs to improve. And then there were several balls in this game where he just sailed it or floated it. I'm thinking in particular of the deep, I think it was to Williamson, the deep post route that just floated down the field. And you could see the difference, by the way, when Rodemaker came in on how much he drove the football on that glance route. You can see really the difference between that and how much Travis is floating the football right now. And I think this will finally be the week where I put together a video explaining why, in terms of fundamentals, the ball is floating on Travis the way that it is, and the reason that it's sailing and he's missing his targets some, because it's a basic fundamental issue that really, really needs to be fixed. It is something that can be addressed to some degree during the season, that can be improved even in a couple days, but they have to actually actively go out of their way to do it. It's all about getting extension through the throw and emphasizing that feeling of extension rather than pulling down on the football. And he's pulling down hard on the football, and that ultimately leads to a lot of problems in terms of accuracy, in terms of sailing and floating the football, not being able to drive it. And you can see on some throws, he doesn't do that as much. It's on the throws where he's just cutting loose and he's not really thinking about it. He oftentimes is throwing a little faster and then has to really let it rip downfield. And then you'll see him get proper extension and everything. And those are usually his best throws. But when he's not doing that, you can see some of these issues that'll come up, and I'll go through some stuff that I think, given the situation this week, playing Pitt, a very down Pitt team after this game, that might be the most valuable thing I can provide in terms of some analysis. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to record that and then and go from there. So until then, this has been Unconquered with Doc Staples. I'm Doc Staples. Thanks for listening. If you've been enjoying this podcast, please leave a 5-star rating over at Apple Podcasts and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Post and repost episodes on social media and tell a friend. And if you haven't left a review in a while, do it again. It really does help the visibility of the podcast. Before we go, I'd also like to thank my advertising partners once more. That's EPR Creations, Louis Marquez of Keller Williams Realty in Jacksonville, Florida, Shenandoah Real Estate in the Research Triangle of North Carolina, Garage Makeovers, the #1 garage remodeling company in South Florida, and Justin Galloway of Benchmark Mortgage, serving Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. You can also stop by the Unconquered Shop at unconqueredpodcast.com, where you can buy stickers, pins, magnets, t-shirts, and other swag. And thanks also to all those supporters over at Patreon, where I post video analysis and field questions for the podcast. I am especially grateful to those above the Dynasty level. That is Andrew Garrett, Brian Leininger, Neil Cook, Casey Kidd, Chris Chartrand, Dave Blair, Hector Cartagena, Jack Horton, Jimmy Van, Jonathan Kennedy, Keith Cheney, Lee Caswell, Tyler Kashishke, Vince Calandra, and Bert Bertoldi. You all are far more generous than I deserve. I'm really grateful. Thanks to you all. This has been Unconquered with Doc Staples. I'm your host, Jason Staples. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support. I made this.